Okay guys, I'm gonna show you how to catch crazy amounts of catfish. This is definitely the easiest way to do it, but you do have to do it correctly if it's going to work. So I made these jugs, and they were the first jugs I've ever made, and that was a couple months ago. And since then, I have learned a lot about making them. So I'm gonna share with you what I learned. First thing was, these caps, I didn't glue them on. I just stuck them on, and they felt tight, so I thought it was gonna be okay. And I was definitely wrong. I had a couple catfish pull so hard, they popped the cap off, and then I lost the fish, and all I was left with was a noodle. So I went back to the store, bought some Gorilla super glue type stuff, and what I'm gonna do is take all these caps off. I'm gonna put a little bit of glue inside this rim, and then I just glued my leg. Stick it back on there, kind of work it in. And I drilled, if you can see, I drilled little holes through the PVC right there. And this is 50-pound test mono. And then, I don't know if you can see that, this little ring, that's what I tie my line to. So I also used 17-pound test, which I thought was gonna be enough. And I opted for thinner lines so fish wouldn't see it as much. And that ended up biting me in the butt because I lost some fish from it. I grabbed onto the noodle and I had a big fish, and it pulled really hard, and I guess it pulled harder than 17 pounds. It snapped my line. That happened twice, so I'm going back and I'm using 50-pound mono, just some cheap 50-pound mono. And I'm gonna use around 8 feet. So that should be about 8 feet. Use some pliers, clip it, and I'm gonna attempt a uni knot. I actually haven't done it before, but I've been researching knots, so actually, you know what, I'm not doing a uni knot, although I'd suggest doing it. I can't remember how to do it, so I'm just gonna do what I always do. Just wrap it around 7 times or more. Doesn't matter that much. Just wrap it around like that, back through the eye of this. Now this is what I'm left with, about that much mono. Now notice I glue this end, I forgot to glue this in now. I also put numbers on these. It'll help you keep track of them. If you've got like 1 through 10, you can drop them in a line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if a fish took one of your jugs and took off across the lake and you're going down there counting them and like number 3 is gone, you know to go search for number 3, and you know approximately where you dropped it. That's why it's good to number them. Also, I put weights in it. So these are kind of undersized weights, but I put a weight in there. I don't know how this got so dirty. But put a weight in there, and that helps when a fish tugs on it and it pulls down, the weight drops to one end and it helps keep the jug up so you can see the jug tilting, and it lets you know you've got a fish on if you're looking at it from a distance. So, all right, now both ends are glued. Got this, whole bunch of line, and I also used regular hooks last time, just a normal standard hook about this size, but not a circle hook. And what I found is because you're not setting the hook, too many fish were swallowing the hook, and that was a problem. I was killing more fish than I wanted to. I ate the ones that I killed, but still I don't want to kill the fish if I don't have to. So I'm switching out with circle hooks to hopefully reduce the number of times that happens. If you'll notice, this hook is, I guess 5/0. It's not that big. A lot of people opt for huge hooks because they think a bigger hook is going to catch them a bigger fish. But I can personally tell you, I've used hooks this size to catch 100, 150 pound sharks. I've caught big sharks on a hook that size. So catching any kind of catfish is not going to be a problem. You can catch huge catfish on a much smaller hook than that. So when you opt for a bigger hook, you're gonna lose the small catfish, but when you get a smaller hook, you'll get everything. I use these little clip-on weights, if you can see that. But I mean, any kind of weight you put on the line will probably work. Put that about this far, that far from the hook. And these are a little bit undersized, but I mean, they'll do the job. You just want something to try to help keep the minnow down. And you can use dead minnows, live minnows, cut bait. whatever you want when you're jugging for catfish, and it'll work great. In fact, the other day I ran out of bait and I had caught a catfish, so I cut that catfish up, just filleted it, and used that, and it worked great. The one thing I will say, if you're gonna use cut bait like that, it's gonna be tempting to use frozen bait. Like you'll catch a fish one day and then freeze it for later. But I've learned with virtually all fishing, when you use frozen bait versus fresh bait, there is a dramatic difference. I get like probably 1/5 the amount of bites on frozen bait that I get on fresh bait, even if it's the same exact fish. If I freeze it and then go out the next day, I'm getting way less bites. So this is what it looks like. Got your circle hook, little weight. That's about 6 feet of line. And that's about probably 4 more feet. So we got about 10 feet of line, which is good, especially this time of year because it's hot and the catfish might be a little bit lower, might not be so close to the banks. So once it's on like that, the way you keep from having just a huge tangled mess is you wrap it up like this. And the other thing is when you use thick line like this, like 50-pound mono, it won't tangle as easy as really thin mono. So now that I got one of these done, what I'm gonna go do is grab my cast net, go try to catch some shad, any kind of bait like that. If I can't catch shad, I'm gonna catch brim and use that as cut bait. I'll cut it up. I'll put it on this one, and while this one's out and actually catching fish, I'm going to work on more jugs and just one by one do that. That way I'm not wasting fishing time, so. See a little brim like this, little guy like that, I would probably cut him in half, although you can catch a really big catfish on a whole one of these, especially live, so I may do that. This is what catfish look like. You catch this many shad and you are home free on some catfish. Oh my gosh. We are about to catch some stinking catfish. The way you generally throw is I kind of hold on to both and I throw them a little bit separate, so like that. So the line doesn't get tangled up when I throw it. All right, on to the next one. We got 4 or 5 out so far now. Here we go. Reasonably sized. All right, here we have it. Perfect. The circle hooks worked exactly as I expected. Look at that, right in the corner of the mouth. So that'll be simple to release him. All right, look there. First little catfish of the night. Not too bad. Nice and pretty. All right, let's let him go. Alright, well that was more dramatic than it needed to be.